great lateral irrigator. This is where most of the research at SAREC gets done. We can break down this field into about half-acre plots and irrigate each one of those differently. So it allows researchers a lot of control in what we're doing. What you might see is that all we have out here is alfalfa. So this is an alfalfa trial that one of our faculty has, Anwar Islam. Everything else, especially as we pass the corn, you'll see looks not like corn should look this time of year. If you're local, you know that's because we had a pretty significant hailstorm here at the end of July. So we lost almost all of our research at SAREC this year to that hail damage, and really the forages and then our crops like sugar beets and potatoes that are below ground are the only things that survived that. So that was a pretty big loss for us, and one of the things that we noticed after that hail came through is we started getting calls from local producers asking questions about how to manage the corn that was in their fields. So questions about how to remove the corn from the field, what they should plant after the corn, how they should deal with nitrates and fertilization in their field. And we found that we didn't really have great answers for those questions. So what we're going to be driving by out here is a large hail study that we put in following that hail event. And really what we're looking at is some basic questions. How do you get the corn out of the field? What, if anything, should you plant after it? Should you try and do a spring or a fall tillage event to bring that residue into your soils? So you can see there's standing corn. That's what it looked like. That's what it looks like. The next treatment that we're driving by, what we did was we came through and we used a corn chopper. So just chopped up that corn material, left all the biomass on the field, came through and hit it with a disc to work the soil, and then finished it with a Landstar, which is a finishing. Yes.
You said a corn chopper, you mean like a corn shredder, like a rail chopper?
Stock chopper.
Stock chopper.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea of doing that treatment is it's going to break down the biomass differently, which might break down into the soil differently and release nutrients at different times for the following crop. All of these treatments, we're looking at 6 different crop treatments following our corn management. So we planted last week sorghum, which is a winter tender crop, so it'll kill with the freeze. We also planted winter wheat, a cereal rye, triticale, which is a rye wheat hybrid. And then we did one mix of triticale and sorghum, so that could possibly give us good fall and spring biomass production, so give us more of a full coverage. So with those, and then we have just a fallow treatment. So if you don't want to put anything on the ground, we want to know which one of these might be the best practice for you. And what we're looking to do is answer questions of if you have cattle on your farm or livestock on your farm, which, if any of these treatments might be the best for you depending on how and when you need to feed your herd. How do they impact things like erosion, so protect your soil from blowing. We want to be able to capture nutrients in the system, so without harvesting your corn, you actually leave all of the inputs that you put on in the field. So you're not taking that grain off at any point. So can we keep those nutrients in, and how does that affect your plan for the next year and for planting? So next we're coming by a second one of our corn management treatments. So for this one, all we did was direct drill the crop into the standing corn. So you can see as you go by it, each pass the corn is lodged one direction or the other depending on the way that we drove. So this treatment is probably going to give us a lot better erosion control. It's going to capture moisture better probably because we have those stalks out there. But we might not get good breakdown of the biomass. It may be harder to manage in the spring for planting our next crop. It may also be harder for the crops to get established because you have more biomass on the surface. Sometimes that makes it difficult to drill into. You don't get good soil seed contact, or it's hard for the seeds to get up out of that. So that's some of the issues that you might have and some of the gains you might have with that kind of a management.
How did you lay this corn down like that?
We just drove right over it. We just with our disc drill. So when we planted the crop in there, we just drove over it. So you'll see as we go by, there's some standing corn still. So that was our fallow treatment. So since we didn't plant anything, that corn didn't get laid down with a planter.
So you did plant something here?
We did, yep. So
What did you plant?
those same 6 crops. So each one of the corn management treatments has either the rye, the triticale, the sorghum, or the winter wheat, or the sorghum triticale mix. And there are signs marking which crop is in each one out there, but since we just planted, they're not up yet. Hopefully they will come up and grow for us this year so that we actually get some value out of them, because we do have corn or cows on station here that would like food for the winter.
Were there some herbicide challenges because you put something on the corn now that?
Yeah, so one of the issues we had is herbicide carryover. Do you remember what we put on, Steve?
Is it,
Baxitrone?
was it Vision?
Promoxin?
What was it?
Vision?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did have an issue. We couldn't put any broadleafs in for 18 months. No, yeah, 18 months is the reentry. So that's why we have all grasses in the mix. It really limited what we were able to do, but it also made it a little bit simpler to come up with what design we wanted to put in. This management out here might look very similar to the first one that we drove by, but for this one, what we actually did was we just went over it with the disc twice. So that first management, we actually went over the corn with 3 different passes. So we had the chopper, the disc, and the Landstar. This one just had the 2 passes with the disc. The biggest difference is probably going to be the size of the corn that's in the field. So without using that chopper, you're getting a different breakdown of that corn stalk material, and how that affects especially the soil and the nutrient cycling is something that we want to look at and understand.
Did you do any soil testing for what fertilizer you had left after?
Yeah, we did soil testing. We did not look at it before we planted, but I have 4 zones in each one of these long strips that I soil tested for organic matter and then basic nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium. And then I actually did a subsurface soil test down to 2 feet to look at the nitrate at that depth and see if any of this impacts that subsurface nitrogen. Yeah. And then this last treatment out here, this is just a stalk chop treatment. So it's the same thing that we did in the first one, only we didn't do any tillage following it. So again, this is probably going to be a lot better for protecting the soil from water and wind erosion. There's a lot more residue on the surface, you can see, so how that impacts the crop coming up. But if we graze it, we might actually get some added grazing value by having that plant material in there still. Yes?
Did you do any plowing? Turning the foliage, the material under the ground so it'll break down faster?
Just disking. We just use the disc to do that. Am I using the wrong word there?
It looks like what's going to even take place, you're going to have so much material on top of your ground. Maybe future, unless the wind and the cattle take care of all your foliage on top, you're going to be fighting it from now on.
Well, so that'll be something that we look at this spring when we come to replant. So each one of these treatments in the spring, we're going to have to make a decision on for the crops like the wheat and the rye and the triticale, when and how we're going to terminate them in the field, and then how we're going to go back in and plant them. So for our treatments that were not disked now, in the spring, we're probably looking at needing to do a tillage treatment to get those fields prepared for planting. And we are trying to track as best we can all the inputs that we're putting in, so things like seed costs, fuel costs, labor costs, and what we're getting out of it as far as potential hay value or grazing value or nutrient capturing value, and trying to factor that in. So depending on what a grower might be interested in doing, we'd like to be able to make a recommendation on what maybe the most cost-effective strategy would be for them in a situation like this, where really you're trying to salvage the best you can out of your lost crop. Do you have anything to add, Steve?
No, just other than what forage is produced, we'll measure forage production, we'll clip, and if we actually get enough production, the idea is to hopefully use some of our fall weaned calves and go out and graze as well. But certainly we're going to measure forage production on all of these different treatments and see what impact there is there.
Do you have any furrow irrigation projects like this? I see this is all under sprinkler.
Yeah, so the only furrow irrigation that we have that had corn in it is right when you drove in to SAREC. You probably noticed it off to the right-hand side of the road. That had an experiment in it at the time, and we weren't able to get that integrated with this study. Plus, it just started to get to be a lot of complicated questions for us. So the great thing with this is we're trying really hard to take producer input and answer questions that we can. The bad thing is it was a surprise, so we didn't get to plan out what we wanted to do, and we knew we needed to get it done as fast as we could. So, you know, some of that good planning that we try and get into other research projects got a little shorted for this one. So yeah, unfortunately it is all under sprinkler irrigation.
You gonna start watering pretty soon?
We have watered it twice already. So it was watered last Saturday, and then it was watered Monday night, but we only put a 1/4 inch on because we wanted to drive out here. So as soon as field day was done, we're gonna put more water on it. Yeah, because I was digging on Monday, and the sorghum and the rye had started to germinate. So we want to make sure that it's got enough moisture in there to get those plants up and going.
How much moisture did you get with the storm?
With the hailstorm?
Yeah.
I think it said like 7/5 hundredths, or yeah, 7/5 hundredths, so 3/4 of an inch. But just based on what the fields look like, I think our rain gauges missed the hail component of that. I think we got enough hail that when that melted, that added more to the precipitation, but we didn't have it measured because it was really soupy out here the next day, soupier than I would expect for 3/4 of an inch.
Well, there isn't any years left on that.
No, so most of the corn in this field was at green silk when it got hit. And you can see we lost almost all of our tassels and all of our leaf material as well. So that really puts the corn in a position where it's not capable of doing a whole lot of anything, because it doesn't have tassels to pollinate those green silks, and it doesn't have leaves to help produce any kernels. And some of the stalks did break below the ears. So this field got hit a little bit harder even than just across the road.
Have insurance on it?
We do not have insurance here at the research farm. Kevin is up in the truck. Maybe you can speak to that.
It's just a policy. We don't carry. We just don't do insurance on these. Yeah.
So 90% of the cost is lost in terms of the research dollars. It's still research costs. It takes 10 times more dollars than just to grow. So all the, like we had different varieties, different treatments, all the labor. That's uncoverable from an insurance standpoint. So if we would have got insurance, then it'd be better. How much would we have gotten?
I don't know. I'm not a good.
$10 that
Do you know, Troy?
There was quite a bit of discussion about how much grazing potential there was with the existing stalks out there, and And my thought was there's not a lot. I mean, you think a cow's going to eat the what ears, what cobs are there, and shucks and the leaves, that type of thing, and they typically leave most of the stalk, and that's really all that's left after is stalk. So we didn't see a lot of grazing potential in just leaving standing corn out there. We do have a couple of areas I guess we can kind of look at.
What's the nitrate level of the stock that's still there, do you know?
So we did some testing on the corn stalks, and I'll let Steve speak to that because he knows more about it than I do.
So it was very low. So we actually didn't measure. So we left the bottom 10 inches, which is where predominantly most of the nitrate is in the lower third of the stalk, and we just took the whole plant above 10 inches, and that was done about a week after the storm, roughly 6 days after the storm. And there was very little nitrate. I know across the road they nitrate tested immediately after the storm, and there was quite a bit of nitrates there. So actually some of that nitrate dissipated before we actually went in and tested.
So you're thinking about a week afterwards, it's dissipated
yeah,
dramatically?
pretty dramatically, yeah.
So that was initial discussions. The nitrates were the concern for grazing and animal feed value. And then after we got our test back, I actually looked at dry matter in the fields, and we determined that there was so little that we would actually get in tonnage off of those fields that it would never justify any kind of silage harvest.